Our next speaker is Bonnie Richard from the Department of Anthropology, and her talk is entitled Education and Opportunity in the Western Himalayas.
It's a common notion throughout the world that education is crucial to helping people move up and out of poverty. But if education is seen as a core solution, why does it only work out some of the time? Years ago, a friend and I took a trek through the Himalayan mountains of northern India in the rural Ladakh region, which borders Tibet. During the 2 months we spent there, the warmth of the families we met and the beauty of the mountains left a lasting impression. At the time, I was preparing to apply to graduate school, so the burgeoning anthropologist in me was intrigued by a society that maintained centuries-old traditions, but also watched Bollywood movies and wore jeans and rode bikes. Not long after I returned home from my trip, I began graduate school, studying Himalayan cultures and how they're changing in contemporary times. From Ladakh in the west to Nepal and Bhutan in the east, economic development has greatly impacted Himalayan societies over the past half-century. Since the late 70s in Ladakh, the government has been working to improve lives by building roads, connecting villages to electricity, and improving access to healthcare and education. As a result, society has been transforming and becoming more modern. Planning my research, I realized that no one had yet studied the impact of Ladakh's economic development on children's educational lives. This is important because in neighboring regions, other researchers had found that there's a huge disparity in whether or not a child gets an education. So it made sense to begin my research in Ladakh with a comparable question. Why are some kids sent to school and others not? Now, as I began my field research, it didn't take long until I found out that in Ladakh, the vast majority of children now actually attend school. However, I also realized that there's still quite a bit of disparity. It's just that it's more complicated. Perfect fodder for an anthropologist. So as I shifted my focus, the new question became, if all children attend school, then what potential obstacles exist when it comes to completing an education? So I set out to study the social fabric of kids' everyday lives. What is school like? How do children view their futures? And what role do they play in their families? I spent a lot of time interacting with preteens and teenagers during after-school hours, where I provided English practice and homework help on a daily basis. On Sundays and holidays, I visited their homes and got to know their families and their neighborhoods. To gain adult perspectives, I interviewed parents and teachers as well, and I lived with a Ladakhi family during my research. As it turns out, the importance of education today is a major shift for the current generation of kids. Even though many of today's parents did not attend school, they all told me sending kids to school is common sense. They wanted their children's education to result in jobs with stable salaries and a better life. When these parents were growing up, education was not a priority. Those that lived in larger towns might have gone to school, with some finishing high school. But in rural areas where schooling was much less common, even those that did attend often finished only primary school. Today, not only are all kids in school, but even poorer children have access to better private schools thanks to donor assistance, which is supposed to equalize opportunities. But does it really? One 16-year-old boy in my research, Sonam, was very smart. So smart, he wanted to become an applied physicist. He was driven and focused, and he even attended a good private school thanks to a sponsorship program. Given his ambition and his affinity for studies, it seemed like Sonam had all the elements he needed to really succeed. But there's more to Sonam's reality than just his own academic aspirations. Sonam comes from a poor family of farmers, one of the poorest in their village, and he's the oldest of his siblings. His father, in addition to running the farm, earns extra money driving a truck. His mother never attended school. And in recent years, his father has suffered from some health problems, which has made running the farm difficult and extra money scarce. One day, when Sonam took me on a tour around his village, he informed me that when he finished high school, he planned on enlisting in the military. I was shocked and confused because I knew his enthusiasm for studying science. It wasn't until I learned more about Ladakhi culture that I could begin to understand why he would make this decision. As the eldest son, Sonam is next in line to be responsible for his family's well-being, and they could really use more income. So instead of pursuing a long-term goal of an advanced degree, Sonam needs to attend to his family's more immediate needs. Finishing high school will mean military service, and he'll be able to get a salary and actually help his family. Sonam said to me, "Nobody is telling me to join the army, but I feel like I don't have a choice. I want to study, but I feel like I'm being pulled." What I've learned in my research is that these days in Ladakh, in Ladakhi culture, there are few things that are more important for children than gaining an education. Family needs are the one priority that have the potential to pose a real barrier. From another perspective, Sonam's access to a good high school and others like him, it could be viewed as a success of donors. And indeed, education levels in Ladakh have risen tremendously. But to what end? These days, the majority of Ladakhi youth in their 20s are actually finishing bachelor's degrees. A college education is now what young people there will need in order to break through the poverty barrier and into the middle class. If Sonam joins the army, it will give him stable earnings, but in the long run, there will be little opportunity for advancement, keeping him on the low end of earnings compared to his peers. Sonam's dilemma highlights a major problem in the provision of charity assistance in Ladakh and beyond, and that is the view of children as individuals, unconnected to families and responsible for no more than their own futures. And it's not so different here at home. If we look at a child's life in a low-income community in North America, on the surface it might appear extremely different. But similar principles apply when it comes to barriers to educational access. Opportunities for teens to earn cash with the goal of helping their families or simply providing for themselves what their parents cannot continue to pull poor youth away from school. So if we take the perspective that children are deeply connected to others, then we can begin to understand more about why children from poor families the world over do not finish enough school to compete for jobs and be upwardly mobile. Helping poor children get the education they need for meaningful social mobility means we need to begin to understand and address the bigger context of their lives.